What it do, y'all boys? Welcome back to another Kenpachi video. I've been hinting at this for a little while. The support you guys show means a lot and only drives me to make more for y'all. So drop a like and click the bell to be notified whenever I drop a video. I got more The Last of Us gameplay on the way, so y'all do stay tuned for that. Now, there's a couple of topics I want to discuss and really get into about what I thought about season 2 of The Last of Us and why I think creative freedoms isn't always a good thing. More oftentimes than not, decisions can be made that can ruin a good movie or show, which there's plenty of examples. Plenty of examples. We're not going to get into that. Now, I don't plan to go scene by scene, but touch on the more important points of the story. A couple things to get out the way before we start talking about this. There's a couple of things that we need understood before I start this video. Yes, I am a fan of the game. Yes, the game and the show are not meant to be exactly the same. And yes, I know one of the directors of the game was a showrunner and director for the show. All that being said, there's some things that we got to talk about. Now, before we get into it, I'm only human, and if you disagree with anything, leave a comment down below, and we can decipher this show that is The Last of Us together. But anyways, now while I am a fan of the game, I'll try to remain impartial and step out of a gamer's point of view and look at it from a show standpoint. I can't make no promises, but enough with the introductions. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of it. Now, what y'all think of the second season of The Last of Us? Y'all ain't got to lie, and it is a safe space. Now, first, we pick up 5 years later, and compared to the 4 years, 5 years isn't that big of a difference, so not really too much looking into that. But we do pick up, and it's pretty much the same. We see Jackson, we see Ellie, we see that strained relationship with Joel, which Ellie got her own right to feel the way she feel, because at the end of the day, that was a big thing for her that happened at the end of season 1. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about, go revisit that. I would be talking about that heavy decision that Joel made at the end of the season. But we see the dance, we see Ellie's friends, we see her friend group, Jesse, Dina, which those are her best friends, and they felt like her best friends, at least initially. Their dynamic was cool. It actually felt like they was friends. It didn't feel forced. Then fast forward to the next morning, Joel is out patrolling with Dina, and there's a horde right outside Jackson. From a show point of view, you might think this is heat. You might think this is heat, with the fun guy growing in the pipes and bringing the horde to Jackson. And in hindsight, it was probably the most action-packed sequence in the show, which is sad, given it was added for the sole purpose of giving the people of Jackson something to do other than looking for Joel in the Soul Storm, and also as an excuse to, you guessed it, not go back for Joel, not get no get back. Not to mention the council, which, bear in mind, was a show only thing. Now, on a normal basis, I don't mind the little world building, but the whole leaders of the Constitution setup they had just had absolutely nothing to do with the plot and made it even more meaningless. Let's take a look at a similar show that had a council, that be The Walking Dead. But the difference from The Last of Us and The Walking Dead is the council in The Walking Dead had about 4 or 5 main characters who were actually trying to make decisions and make moves. Now, understand it was the responsible thing for the people of Jackson to do, to not want to get revenge, but for you to add characters just for fluff is insane. There's enough focal details that's been skimmed over in the story for them to be adding in randos that had no meaning to the plot whatsoever. There should be no reason that we're having a whole meeting of everyone in the town to decide to send 15 people to go to Jackson. The leader should have made that choice by herself, and it shouldn't have been that big of a group anyways. But that's just nitpicking, I guess you could say. But let's be for real. Why are we even talking about this? Why are we taking up so much time in anything other than Ellie on her mission? But not only did they not get back, but they picked the story up 3 whole months later after Ellie's been getting therapy the whole time and thought it'd be heat to have her say her innermost thoughts that was never said out loud. Like that goes against everything. Like she is supposed to be closed off emotionally because she's only worried about the get back. But now you got her going through therapy and saying all of her little issues with Joel to get out of the hospital. But enough of that. We're gonna get back into that later. Now let's compare that scenario to having the story pick up the next day when that pain is fresh on her mind, which explains why she's hunting Abby and killing people in the city trying to find her. That'd just be in the game, of course. In the second season, they nerfed Ellie into the ground, as they say. No cap, no kizzy. You could look that up. If I don't know if y'all seen the show yourselves, but dear Lord, this child is helpless. But not only is she not killing anybody, she can't read a map and is acting like she's more concerned with her honeymoon with Dina than of avenging her father. Well, not her real dad, but damn near might as well be. And before y'all say, she was childish, and she didn't change that much from season one. Yes, she did. In season one, she was a top student in a federal military academy and not only helped scavenge and patrol with Joel when Joel was injured, but she also cracked Joel and Tess's radio codes with almost no clues. Which, a quick refresh for y'all that don't remember, in the very beginning of season one, when Tess was out scavenging or whatever, she would play songs on Joel's radio so he would know what to do for good and bad things. And Ellie deducted and manipulated Joel into telling her what it was. She found the clues and then she said, "Oh, there was something on the radio playing," and then she was like, "Oh yeah," and then she made up a song from the '80s to get Joel to tell her what the code actually stood for. So she figured it out herself. And now you're telling me that she can't do anything? She don't know how to do anything? I'm not going for this old Ellie's incapable stick. I'm not going for it. Ellie was very capable. She was catching bodies. She was doing way more than she was doing in season one. And I want y'all to go rewatch season one to see how much of a difference it is. This is not all in my head. But back on track. I'm not sure if y'all noticed, but all the important clues leading her down her story, she just happened upon. Like her searching the first dead body in the TV station and just happened to finding a clue and leaving, and that next part where she was escaping from the scars and just perfectly ends up right in the right in front of the hospital where Nora's at. Now we have arrived at probably the most authentic part of the show that they could have done with what the directors would allow, which is the Nora torture scene, because they wasn't giving Ellie any type of cool moments this show. They really, we're not even gonna talk about agendas as of now. But which we don't want to glorify the torture, but it perfectly encapsulates how far Ellie is willing to go to get revenge. Now in the game, it not only felt rewarding to get her because she is not only surrounded by people in the game, which they kind of once again glossed over Ellie putting in any type of work, and she just magically appeared behind Nora after sneaking through a whole hospital full of soldiers. But anyways, it felt more rewarding in the game because you had to actually work for it, and because of what she said about Joel before we caught her, it made it all the more deserving. But on a real note, after that scene in the game, Ellie was devastated by what she had did and how far she went to get those answers. Now think back real hard how Show Ellie handled that same exact scene, which was really the first or the most violent scene that we, well, not the most, but the second most that we've seen Ellie do the whole second season. And it came halfway through her story, and what did she do when she tortured somebody for the first time? Well, for the first time in season two, whispering it was easy. Come on now, let's be for real. All this that she's supposed to be going through, and at this point she's still saying like, oh, it was easy. That line would have made more sense if she was on demon timing and just killing people the entire season, which is how it should have gone, as it ties directly into Ellie's character and the show as a whole. If you take a gritty and real show and drop a main character who's headstrong to the point of being annoying, incapable, and idealistic to the point of delusion, you get The Last of Us season 2, but a main character who feels out of place with the amount of drive she had to avenge Joel in the second season. She should have stayed home. Let's be for real, and saved everyone the trouble. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Kenpachi, these directors know what they're doing. Let's keep a couple things in mind so I can pop this copium bubble. Let's bear in mind season 1 averaged about 8 million viewers. Go ahead and ask me how many season 2 had. Don't worry, I'll wait. It started off with 5 million season 2, and by the finale, down to 3. Now, before we think it's a bias, look at the numbers, and these directors clearly out of touch since they added this a therapist into a zombie apocalypse because they felt like they needed it to give the city a life. The city of Jackson, it didn't have enough life, so says the directors. It didn't have enough life, so they added a therapist. Dear Lord, all that character did was hate Joel and tie Ellie down in the hospital for 3 whole months, which takes away the whole point of it being a story with revenge tied so deep to the plot. And let's be real here while we're on the subject. Joel killing Eugene and then lying about it was a dumbass boiling point moment for Ellie. There was 5 whole years for her to press the issue, but she decides to let it fly when Joel killed someone for the safety of the community and was in the middle of consoling his wife. It had to be right then. Come on, bro. We can't be for real. But back to the plot itself. Ellie gets back to the theater, which for some odd reason, Dina and Ellie are being complete assholes to Jesse, who went cross states, mind you, to go save them. For Ellie to leave Jesse behind to go hunt Abby. Now this is where writing and consistency come into play. Because if Ellie was obsessed with revenge and actively out on a blood hunt, and actively out for blood, looking for Abby the whole time, like in the game, then it would have made sense for her to leave Jesse behind to seek revenge. But there was none of that obsession from the 3 months of therapy to her vacation during the revenge trip with Dina. Let's be for real. That Joel was the last priority. It did not feel like Joel was important to the plot at all. Like it felt like, I don't know, he was more important to Dina and Jesse. I'm not sure. Tommy, not even Tommy. Tommy kicking it with a therapist. But we not gonna get too much into that, man. There was honestly a lot of agendas being pushed, and none of them did the show any good. Fast forward, we have Ellie in another game moment without Ellie's game-like character. Once again, a character out of place. Almost every dire moment in the game was like a sore thumb in the show because the realism felt out of place compared to the lighthearted season 2. Ellie is on her way to the aquarium, which she sees the wolves in the middle of going to a raid to the Scar Island, but somehow Ellie gets shipwrecked and lands in the exact same island. But not only that, y'all remember that delusion I was talking about earlier? Yeah. Ellie then got dragged by a group of Scars into the forest, and she's begging the little kid like she doesn't know that they are fanatically killing people and stringing them up like birds. She's seeing this personally. She's seen this everywhere she goes. She's seeing these bodies strung up, and she's acting like she doesn't know. The one scene where there's a kid getting killed, a Scar getting killed by wolves, and she's like, no, we gotta stop this. We gotta stop this, bro. Ellie was never like that. Ellie was never unrealistic. Like, we're in the middle of a war zone, and this has nothing to do with us. This is where the realism and not catering to people comes into play, because realistically, Ellie came looking for revenge, so she doesn't care who does and doesn't die. So her going out her way saying like, "Oh nah, Jesse, you're not doing enough," or "Jesse, you're not shit because you came all the way over here and now you're not trying to help me save this kid." Like, who is this kid? When did Ellie ever become the type of person to save kids, especially kids in the middle of a war zone that are like, come on now, let's be for real. Ellie's a good person, but not like that, bro. Come on, these people are stringing people up. But to then, let's bring it back to the scene. She's strung up. She is, her hands are roped up. She is surrounded by 10 Scars. Then in the middle they hear a whistle, and for all of them to just magically be like, nah, let's not slit her open like everybody else. Let's leave her here and untied next to boats, and we'll figure it out later. Come on now. Keep in mind, the director said he added this scene to show how obsessed Ellie was to get Abby. We cannot be for real. We cannot be for real. And keep in mind, this is the creative director for the game and the director for the show. Now, they had the whole season to show how obsessed Ellie was with Abby's revenge. She was supposed to be looking for her the whole time, bulldozing her way through anybody, not showing any type of emotion, which I guess, as far as from a show standpoint, that's not too realistic, but we got to look back at season 1. Season 1 was real. Season 1 was real. The story did not cater to nobody. There was all type of stuff. There was cannibals, there was pedophiles, there was all type of stuff, and the story was good. And it's not that it was a game. Season 1 transferred well to TV. It was one of the best HBO shows, beating out House of Dragons. It beat out a whole bunch of other stuff. All that scene did was show her willingness to drown and make dumbass decisions. But anywho, we arrive at the aquarium where the obviously toned down scene, which I can't complain too much due to it being on TV and they can't just show Ellie shooting a guy and stabbing a pregnant lady in the neck. So I do understand that. That scene is also tied into the story on a deeper and surface level, but I understand it being toned down. That's understandable if you really looking at it from a show point of view. They can't really do too much, especially when it comes to the pregnant lady. What I want about it by her is it being completely accidental, and then later on when she get into the mix with you know who, to be like, oh nah, it was an accident. I ain't mean to hurt them. I was only looking for you. Are we being for real right now, chat? This shit cannot be real. That shit was not heat, and that moment could have been a whole video slash rant by itself. And who could I be talking about, y'all wonder? Abby, the motherfucking goat at this point, the antagonist to the story, but she really felt like the protagonist, how the producer writing it. Now, when we see her, she's got aura about her, and it seems everybody but Ellie has. There's supposed to be two sides of the same coin going throughout the same journey at different points. In this season, it did not feel like that at all. I could bet cash money, cash, cold hard cash, that Abby in season 4 is going to be way more like her game counterpart than Ellie was in this season. You can tell from her energy in the last scene of the show that she's been through some things. I don't even see this show making it to the projected 4th and 5th season conclusion. And if the show isn't canceled, then it may just have a completely different ending, which I wouldn't mind. Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't even mind if it had its own ending because at least it's its own separate story at this point. To look at season 2 as its own story, it just did not live up to the hype. From a show only standpoint, I give it a good 3.5, and that's being gracious, honestly, because they did add a lot and they did remove a lot just to have it flow, but it didn't really flow. They was pushing agendas. They was just having simple and unheard messages, and they were blurting them out, like during that scene with Jesse and Ellie where they were going back and forth before Ellie went to go look for revenge, where Jesse was basically like, oh, you do everything for yourself. Yes, yes, she does. But that isn't supposed to be said out loud. Like that isn't supposed to be at the forefront because she is absorbed with the revenge. But it doesn't even seem like she's absorbed for the revenge. It just kind of seems like a scene, like all scenes that were supposed to make it more authentic to the show. It just didn't match with the game. My apologies. That the other way around. That it was supposed to match up with the game, but the game and the show's intensity as far as season 2, it just doesn't match. It just doesn't mesh because you have this real gritty story but you have an ungritty main character, which I'm not sure why they did that. I feel like there has to be something behind the scenes. There must be something behind the scenes that forced them to write Ellie this way, because it just doesn't make sense that how Ellie is the only one that got written into the ground and everybody else had a better story, more interesting story, more realistic. There was a lot of agendas being pushed, and for the story to be diluted for agendas is just crazy. The Last of Us has some of the most interesting and realistic gameplay and storytelling in recent memory, not to mention one of the most divisive endings in a story, in my opinion. Well, as far as games goes, that was one of the most divisive endings that it really drove the fan base one way or another, and it was just one of the best written stories and endings in my opinion. I don't think it could have been any better. It could have been done any better. And it was had heavy philosophical merits. So y'all, please stay tuned to my next video because I have more gameplay for y'all. But to clear this up and get back to the meat and beans of it, did I hate the show? Contrary to my popular comments, no. But could it have been better? Hell yeah. The Last of Us has some of the most interesting gameplay. So those agendas you already know. You already know how I feel about the agendas. This season could have been way better. And if they did it right, not to say the game is all the way better, because I mean it is, but I'm not gonna say that. Let's just say from the show point of view, because it is just a show and it's not the game and it can't be exactly the same. The show was okay. The show was okay. They added some zombies in the beginning to make it more cinematic. Uh, they had some good interactions. Mm, it was okay. Yeah, I can't complain. I wouldn't rewatch it, but it was a solid watch from a show only point of view. From a game only point of view, you already know how I feel about it. Uh, I guess some people would call it dog water. But anyways, this is my first type of review type video. So if you guys enjoyed it, drop a like and subscribe, and you can even hit the bell to know the next time that I drop, which will definitely be within the next couple of days. I got some more of The Last of Us gameplay for y'all. If y'all like any other shows or movies and y'all want me to watch it or review it, let me know in the comments. I'll see what I could do. But anyways, thanks again for tuning in with your boy Kenpachi. See y'all in the next video.